Hello everyone and welcome to All Things Watched. In this video we are going to talk about episode 3 of the brand new Phase 5 Marvel MCU project, which was of course Echo. Now I'm definitely very far behind with this series, but so we're going to try to clue it up now, and this is episode 3, and this episode was titled Tuklo. And honestly, I really enjoyed this episode. It really had a ton of action in there, and whatnot, and it was really a very fast-paced episode. And I really, I read online that a lot of people, really had a lot of issues with the pacing of this series, and I can sort of see why. Episode 1 was kind of, pedal to the metal action. This episode here is kind of pedal to the metal action, and then episode 2 was a little bit slower. Now, I still thought it was really good and whatnot, but this one was definitely very much an adrenaline rush. So we'll go ahead and jump into the scene-by-scene breakdown. And so this episode actually opens up black and white, and it really reminded me back of, I believe it was the 1920s when this type of film came out, roughly, or maybe even a little bit older, when there really wasn't any audio. So you would see sometimes pictures or even video, but then they would have to basically put the captions in between, in between each scene to sort of give us some context as to what's going on, and then everything else was just acted out. And so in this situation, it opens up with the short story known as the Light Horseman, but it was still, told by, this presentation was done in that old-fashioned manner. And so we're introduced to the, as you see, the black and white story, and here we're introduced to a bunch of what appears to be, I guess, natives or almost like Indians. You really get like a cowboy Indian vibe here with this little scene. And of course, then we're introduced to Tuklo, which you'll learn, which we will or which will appear to have some form of connection to Echo. It seems almost like all of everything that we're seeing so far with the flashbacks, it really seems like it's really echoing Maya's sort of her ancestry. So it's probably safe to say that Tuklo here is a part of Maya's ancestry. And so we see here that what Tuklo is, what she specializes in is she's basically like this sharpshooter. She has really good skill with also throwing this like bone, I think it is, or some kind of option, or some kind of weapon. I think it's a bone or something that she throws. And then plus her marksmanship as well. So she's very skilled with basically her accuracy, hand-eye coordination, but also firing weapons as well. So I guess her superpower will be that she's just extremely accurate with pretty well everything that she throws or shoots. And so the story continues, and it says, "These are the criminals we have been looking for." And so it seems as though, this group of the Light Horsemen, or whatever they are, seems to be trying to find this certain group of criminals, and it seems like they're hunting them on these horses. And of course, they end up coming here, and they see this, you can tell right away that this is a trap, and then the caption actually does come up and says it's a trap. But then when we go back to Tuklo starts to see the bright spinning spiral, so to speak, that right here, which indicates, I guess that she's sort of tapping into that power from, sort of tapping into the power that she had from Chafa, who was the origin of I believe it's the Chafa Nation. So you can tell that Tuklo here is tapping into that, and that she has that access as well. And then Tuklo ends up getting up with this shotgun or rifle, whatever it is, and she ends up saving the day. But it was a really cool black and white scene, and I really liked how the beginning of pretty well all the episodes here so far of Echo shows us a different part of her genealogy, shows us a different part of her lineage, and I really like how it all plays and ties into each other. And as we go in, as it ties into Maya's story directly, because we know that technically Maya really is a villain, or at least in the beginning she was a villain. Now she's more of an anti-hero, and I guess she'll probably have that status as anti-hero for a long time. But, she does have to be, do a little bit more to redeem herself, of course. Even, I would imagine that this series itself will be some form of redemption arc, or at the very least, lead into something that would give her a redemption arc in the future. I would love to see Echo pop up again. But anyways, we then come back to modern day and we meet up with Maya, and she's here going out on this walk, and she actually comes face to face with Tuklo, which we actually see here, and it's almost like Tuklo is trying to warn her somehow, or trying to, almost like make her be aware of her surroundings, because remember, Echo is deaf, she cannot hear anything, but the moment that Tuklo appears, then Maya ends up getting kidnapped, and she ends up getting taken then to the roller skate place here, and she's tied upside down, and she's, basically got everything. She's upside down, tied up, and everything, which I did think was a little bit silly, because for one, I was just trying to kind of curious as to how the people got her up there to begin with. Like, it's not easy carrying someone unconscious, especially when it's literally dead weight. So I just don't buy in that they, I mean, that would be hard enough to do just to carry somebody, but then also to hang them upside down. I mean, that would be, to me, almost near impossible, especially in this situation. But it is a Marvel movie, a Marvel show, so we can forgive that. But either way, she gets captured there. And in the meantime, outside, Bonnie is looking in, and so we end up learning, of course, that that person that used to be, working at the roller area, as we already know, he ended up calling a lot of Kingpin's henchmen, and this is why they have Maya captured. Basically, they captured her to hand her over to Fisk, and I would assume they're looking for some form of reward, or maybe some form of respect, or maybe a position, or a way to move up in his ranks, or something like that. But either way, they got her kidnapped, and of course here Maya is looking in, and so she's very curious as to what's going on, and so she actually goes in, and she ends up meeting Henry. But I did think that this scene was pretty clever, because they actually have Henry sign language to her, and do the ASL, and he communicates with her using sign language, and I thought that that was very creative. I did think that that was a really cool, creative decision, and I thought it was pretty clever on the writing. Just a little detail like that, I thought was pretty clever. I did appreciate that for sure. But he is able to warn her, and he basically tells her to leave, and tells her that there's nothing going on or nothing happening, but he ends up doing the sign language, telling her to leave, and warns her that there is something going on. But of course she ends up going out to the truck and gets kidnapped herself, and then she's thrown into the room with Maya. Now this is the first time that Maya and Bonnie has actually come face to face, so it is pretty interesting, a pretty interesting way for them to meet for the very first time. They meet because they're both kidnapped and being held into this room. Maya, of course, is able to escape. She has the skills, and plus I think she had something in her new prosthetic leg, like a knife or something built into it, so she's able to cut herself free, and so obviously she ends up cutting Bonnie free as well. And, they do have, a little bit of a disagreement. Obviously, they haven't seen each other in a very long time, and, it's just not a good way to meet, and so they do have a little bit of a, kind of like, well, why didn't you call me? Why didn't you contact me? And, and they're both right, really. You can see both of their points of view. Bonnie's upset that Maya didn't tell her, that she was back in town, but then at the other hand, Maya's kind of like, well, why didn't you call me? But then Bonnie's probably like, well, I did call you, but you didn't call me back. So, it was pretty cool to see, it was just really cool to see that banter back and forth. But they did a really good job at showing you both sides of the story. And so once she gets her free, she ends up basically, Maya ends up putting together this really weird little contraption, which I thought was pretty cool, because it shows that Maya is pretty creative, and she can be pretty intelligent when it comes to this kind of stuff. Put me in mind of almost like she almost put me in mind of like, it reminded me back to the original Iron Man movie, when Tony was stuck in the cave and he had to make do with the parts that he had, or even in Iron Man 3 when he went into the hardware store and he had to make do with the parts that he had. Well, I've kind of felt that way here with Maya. She's sort of having to put together this contraption, which I think what it looks like, it appears that she was actually shooting ball bearings out of the gun or something like that. Like, that's the impression that I got. Seemed like it was like she's shooting ball bearings or something, but she ends up getting it together, and she puts on a laser, and of course she ends up shooting. Basically, it seems to me like she's sort of trying to calibrate it and make it line up, because oftentimes whenever you put a laser, even on an actual gun like a hunting rifle, you oftentimes have to calibrate it and make sure that it's in line, and basically you have to make sure that it's actually accurate. And I believe that that's what she's most likely doing here. She realizes that the laser is not fully active or accurate, so she's trying to calibrate it and make sure that it is accurate so that she can use it to help her escape. and she ends up taking the ball bearings gun, and she ends up shooting out the lights, causing the light to basically explode. And of course, then the guard, and you can tell by the way too that the people that kidnapped Maya are very inexperienced. They really don't know what they're doing. The guard came in here very unprepared. She should have known that she didn't stand a chance from Maya. And Maya, as you can see, the lasers pointed on her stomach, and Maya actually shoots her a bunch of times with the ball bearings, which was kind of really funny, which I thought. And then, of course, once Maya fully escapes, then she ends up sending the two criminals a message, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. As you can see, it says XO Maya, and you can see the picture of the guard. Maya has her now tied up and basically kidnapped in that room. And so it was just a really funny sequence to see that and see how Maya actually sent that photo to the person, that criminal, the guy that worked at the skate shop. And so once they see this, then they realize, uh-oh, they're in trouble. This deal is not going to go down the way that they had anticipated. Maya has escaped. She's clearly going to try and fight her way out of this, and they probably have somewhat of an idea of how good of a fighter that she really is, or if not, well, they're about to find out. And so, the guy that kidnapped Maya tries to escape, but of course Zane and his crew, they're like, nope, not today, and they shoot him literally in the back, and they actually kill him and whatnot. And so Zane ends up coming forward then to ask Henry, hey, where is Maya? Where are you keeping her? What is she doing? Where is she hiding out? And as you can see, the guy in the background there now is dead because they shot him in the back. And then all the lights go out, and this is when the action really starts to kick in, because now Maya is really coming in. And I really thought that this was a really creative choice as well, because they actually had Maya crank up the music, which was very appropriate because Maya is deaf. So I thought that was really appropriate that she was able to turn up the music so loud that it very likely hurt everybody else's ears and made it so that they couldn't hear, but it didn't have any effect on her just because of the fact that she was deaf. So I really liked how, that they were, I really liked the creative choice there, because they're creative enough to throw that in there. Just little details like that, kind of like how Daredevil is blind. I mean, he's not fully 100% blind. He does see, it's almost like he can see sound. Well, I really liked how with Maya, she's fully deaf, and they really embrace that. Rather than making it seem like has a disability, it's more like her power. It's more like her deafness becomes a superpower and becomes an advantage as opposed to a disadvantage. So I really like how Marvel was really playing into that idea, and they didn't hold back and treat her like she was just some disabled woman. They actually embraced it and actually, allowed her to fully, rather than being treated as being disabled, it was like she had a power, a superpower. And so then this is when we get the really cool sequence. Then, of course, we get this scene which was literally in the trailer. Maya takes the guy's head and smashes it into the floor, and it is very bloody. So absolutely amazing sequence there, really cool, and the choreography and hand-to-hand combat in this episode was phenomenal, just as good as the Daredevil fight in episode 1. They did a really good job. With the choreography team did a really good job. In fact, the only complaint that I would have with the series, at least so far, is that there wasn't enough of these scenes. I kind of wish every episode sort of had this little, fighting sequence, but I understand it costs money and it takes time and a lot of practice and whatnot, and I understand a lot goes into these shows, but it is a superhero show. I feel like one thing that the superhero genre is missing right now, especially in Marvel, is that hand-to-hand combat. That's what we really loved about the early Captain America movies. We loved the hand-to-hand combat. That's what we oftentimes love with some of the Daredevil, especially Daredevil on Netflix. We really, loved the hand-to-hand combat there with Daredevil, especially the single shot sequence that they did in the hallway. And so you did get a little taste of that here with Maya. She really goes full throttle. And then we got a really cool scene here where they actually edit Tuklo in with Maya, so you can see how she's sort of not necessarily drawing on Tuklo's power, but you can see the parallel that she has the marksmanship and accuracy the same as Tuklo, and every time she shoots one of the villains, they actually cut back to the flashback scene of the black and white scene with Tuklo shooting, and I just thought it was really clever and really excellent editing and a great way of storytelling while also keeping it intense and full of action. And I really like that sequence. In my opinion, it's probably one one of the best fighting sequences that we've seen in any Marvel movie in quite some time. Like I said, I feel like a lot of the Marvel movies are really lacking in in the hand-to-hand combat stuff. But this series does not disappoint. At least not this episode. Here, once again, a very creative choice. Maya is sort of surrounded, and she has to utilize everything. She has to utilize her environment, stuff that's around her, and once again, she does. Here at a roller skate, you have this little section that's like an arcade. So she rips out the guns and takes out the guns and the cables that the gun is attached to on these little video game things, and she starts using the cable and the off of the guns as if it's a whip. And once again, just absolutely phenomenal. She just goes right to town with these whips. Once again, choreography and editing and directing of that whole scene was just flawless, absolutely phenomenal. Quite frankly, I wouldn't have changed anything about that sequence. I really thought it was really pedal to the metal, and it was just an absolute phenomenal sequence. And I hope we see a lot more of that throughout the series as well. And so after we get through all this, though, of course, once she gets done, fighting through all the bad guys, and she learns that Bonnie and Henry are obviously, they're at risk. They got guns to their head, so she's obviously not going to jeopardize them, which is, when you really think about it, this is actually the very first time that Maya has actually sort of stepped away from the villain arc and sort of into the more of an anti-hero, or even hero to some degree, but I would say more of an anti-hero, because she's still bad. She still killed all these people. She's still kind of like the Punisher. She didn't say she didn't hold back or anything. She really did kill a bunch of these people. So, but this is the first time we see her actually do something, other than to do something that benefits somebody other than herself, because here she stops fighting and she actually sort of sacrifices herself, or at least stands down, for the sake of saving Bonnie and Henry. So this is one really big step forward, I think, for the character of Echo and for Maya, because I really think that this is the first time that we really see a little bit of a glimpse, at least, of her being good, as opposed to just straight up gangster, straight up criminal working for Wilson Fisk. So I really like this scene. I thought it was a big step for Maya, and definitely a big step forward for the storytelling. But of course, when Zane and everybody has all of them, held down, Zane ends up getting a phone call, and he's told to stop and to release all of them. And I think that we know, I know just the same as the audience knows, everybody knows, the only person that has that kind of power will be someone like Kingpin, Wilson Fisk himself. He will be the only person that has that kind of power to be able to call off Zane and, to basically, just say, hey, leave him alone, don't hurt them anymore. And I just don't see anybody having that power other than Fisk himself. And so he calls off Zane and basically tells them to leave her alone. The only problem that I really had with that scene was just the coincidence of it and how convenient it was. I had no problem with him getting the phone call and being told to leave everybody alone. I just don't believe in a million years that it would have happened during a time just as he's literally about to shoot them. It was just too coincidental to me, too convenient, and I just don't believe that that would, it was just way too convenient. It was way too coincidental. And so that was a little bit of a nitpick that I had with this episode, which was, it was too convenient. It seemed like there was a couple of situations that it was just too easy, too convenient, and, but it was still a lot of fun. I still really enjoyed it. And so Bonnie and so Bonnie ends up leaving, and she is a little bit concerned and a little bit scared, and rightfully so. I mean, she just went through a very traumatic thing here with all these criminals, and so she basically looks at Maya, and I think she's Maya tries to comfort her the best that she can. She's like, hey, don't worry, Bonnie, these criminals are not going to come after you again. They're here for me. They're here for you. They're trying to get me. And so it was really cool to see, once again, to sort of see Maya try to comfort Bonnie, even though there's a lot of friction there. You can still feel like there's a lot of friction there. And Bonnie actually says to Maya, hey, why don't you stick around? Like, I don't want you to leave. Like, just don't vanish like you did last time. Don't stay out of touch and whatnot. And so Maya ends up, and so Maya sort of tells her, hey, don't worry about it, we'll figure it all out, and we'll get through all this or whatever. And so then Maya ends up going back to Henry and speaking to Henry, and I guess just sort of to make sure that, Henry is doing okay and whatnot, just to make sure, I guess just to sort of touch bases with him, and it was really cool to see this whole sequence and whatnot. And this is when I think it was this scene here when Henry actually decides that he's going to, when he decides, sorry, that he is actually going to help or try to help Maya to some degree. But he does say to her, like, oh, this is a little crazy. He's like, I just got kidnapped by, by the person that's been cleaning my skates for all these years. And he's like, there, and actually, Henry even says what we think here, the audience, he actually says there's only one person that could have called off Zane, which of course is Wilson Fisk. And so it was just really cool back and forth. I really like Henry. Like, to me, he's one of the strengths of this series, one of the strong characters of the series, and he's also the most realistic. He's very grounded. Like, he's kind of like the audience, I find. He kind of says what we're thinking. And so they have their conversation, and Maya ends up going back home. And of course, when she ends up going home, Scully is here, and he's now there with her brand new leg. He has it designed, and I really liked what he said to her about the prosthetic leg, this new leg that he had designed for her. He had it, painted in a certain way and whatnot, but he tells her that the leg actually resembles a Chata warrior. And I just thought that that was so cool because we know that Echo, she is from this Chata nation, and she's an absolute warrior. She's a beast, literally drawing powers from her ancestors, or at least echoing her ancestors, which is just so cool. And yeah, it was just, I really loved the design of the leg. And once she gets the prosthetic leg, she ends up leaving. But here's a really cool shot of her new prosthetic leg while she's driving the motorcycle. And you can see how much it really blends in. It's it seems like it's metal. And it seems like Scully has this very much reinforced. But you can also see the symbol here, which is so cool. Really cool. And I was actually kind of hoping that, Maya would have tied into the new hero that they introduced in What If. I think her name was Corey or something like that. I don't understand why Corey and Maya were not somehow related. I know Corey was a part of the Mohawk Nation, but still, I mean, there were so many similarities between the two characters. I don't know why there wasn't some form of relation or something like that. Like, I don't know why Marvel didn't just say that, why not just say that Echo came from, that nation, or why not say that Corey was a part of the Chata Nation, or somehow, or maybe in the future we'll learn that the Chata Nation and the Mohawk Nation all work together or something like that. I don't really know what they'll do, but it would be pretty cool if they did that. But either way, I think that Maya and Corey should have had some form of relationship. So here we get a really cool shot then, of course, of Echo leaving, or Maya leaving, and just a beautiful, a beautiful scenery here of her on her bike. And she's so cool too, she drives a bike. Captain America oftentimes drove a motorcycle, which was really cool too. And so then we go back, and once again, the score for this episode, the music, it was all very impactful, and you can see you can see Biscuits and Chola, here, I guess, at their sort of like their religious ceremony, or almost like a church type thing that they attend. And you can see that Chola is very worried here. Now, Biscuits, Biscuits doesn't, he's in his own world here. But Chola is definitely feeling something here. She knows something's not right. And so, she's really going to have, she's really, I think, concerned. Maybe she sees the bird, or maybe she can just sense that something went down with Maya, or that something is going to go down with Maya in the future. But either way, you can see the worried look on her face. And then finally, Maya ends up getting back home and going back to her house to stay for the night, or whatever, to get ready for the night. And of course, who should be there but Kingpin himself? And that's actually how this episode ends. It ends with Fisk there meeting Maya and waiting for her to get home, and it was just so intimidating. Even the music changes and everything. And Vincent D'Onofrio just does such an amazing job with his performance as Kingpin. He really walks the walk and talks the talk. He's very intimidating. He's a really big man overall in real life, and so whenever he's on screen, you really feel his presence. And it was just so cool to see him there, and also not surprising. I mean, obviously, him and Maya were going to have to come together at some point. Now, I think this series do only have 5 episodes. This was episode 3, so we only got 2 episodes left. So I'm guessing that the next episode will be very heavy, and very heavy with Wilson and Maya's, probably their backstory, almost like the first episode. I suspect that the scene that we got in the trailers with Fisk holding Maya's hand as a child, I suspect we'll see that probably in the next episode, just because I feel like the next episode will be very heavy on their relationship, and just like that sort of thing. So I don't really know. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe that'll be in the finale. But I do think the next episode will be very heavy on Fisk and Maya, and then the finale will be, well, whatever I guess the next episode sets up. I don't really know how this series is going to end, just because I don't really know how it can end, like, because we know that Fisk is obviously not going to die, because he's already been confirmed that he's going to be in Daredevil Born Again. And I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure Marvel confirmed, or they said somewhere online it said that this series, actually Echo, was supposed to set up the events for Daredevil Born Again. So I'm very curious to see how this can sort of end, because Maya has already went against Fisk. Fisk already knows who her family is. He already had her kidnapped and the family kidnapped, and whatnot. So I don't really know, like, how can she get out of this and then just walk away? Like, if she doesn't kill Fisk, then how can she, like, he can't just let her go. He's run this empire, this whole criminal empire, this whole criminal underworld. He can't just let her go. But then at the same time, she can't kill him, because he's going to be in Daredevil Born Again. So I'm not really 100% sure how they're going to resolve this. Maybe she'll just go back to working with him. Maybe they'll somehow have some form of mutual agreement or something like that. But I would think that for a finale, there would have to be some form of, like, climactic battle or fight sequence or something like that. I mean, we're not there yet, and I have no idea what they're going to do for that, but I just feel like it's, by now, I just feel like I don't see how either one of them can just walk away from the other. But, like, I kind of hope that she doesn't fight Fisk, because, Fisk has already been in the Daredevil series, he's been in the Hawkeye series, and now he's in the Echo series, and he's already lost to Daredevil pretty well twice, really, when you think about it. In season 1 and season 3, he kind of loses to Daredevil twice. Daredevil threatens him, and he's like, hey, leave this town, don't have anything to do with anything anymore, and I'll leave you alone. But then he ends up coming back into the criminal world in the Hawkeye series. Once again, he loses in the Hawkeye series, and now here he is again in Echo, and we know he's going to be there again in Daredevil Born Again. So if sure that they can have a hand-to-hand combat and he could lose, but how many times is Kingpin just going to keep losing and losing and losing? Now, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love seeing him come back. Every single time he's on screen, he's just so good and such a great talent and such a cool, compelling character. But you do have to, he can't just lose every single time, because, then it just sort of loses its value, because now it's just like, he'll just become a joke if he keeps losing over and over and over. So I do hope that there will be eventually some consequences or some gravity to Kingpin actually being in the MCU. I do hope that we do see something big from him. He is able to maybe take out, like, a lower level character, someone maybe even like Echo. I would not want something to happen to Echo. I absolutely love Maya. She's actually one of my favorite new heroes ever since Endgame. All the new characters that were introduced after Endgame, Maya is probably my favorite of them all so far. So I hope nothing happens to her, because I would love to see a future with her. But at the same time, I don't know how many more times we can keep watching Fisk lose. So it'll be very interesting to see how it goes anyways, and whatnot. And overall, I absolutely love this episode. It was very heavy in action, very action-packed, and overall, I just really had a lot of fun with Tuklo and with this episode, and I can't wait to see how the series ends and where they will go to next. And with that being said, that's my review of episode 3 of Echo. Let me know in the comment section below if you've seen it, and if you'd like to tell me why or why not. If you like this video, click that subscribe button, and until the next one, take care.